Hello, and welcome to Yesterday, Today, and Forever, a virtual ministry of the Churches of Christ. It is our desire to present to the 21st century person the faith of the first century Christians. We seek unity through the acceptance of the faith that was once and for all time delivered unto the saints, a system of faith which first began to be spoken by our Lord prior to his crucifixion, and was later confirmed to the saints by the apostles and inspired writers of the New Testament. Thus a faith from yesterday to today and into forever. Our speaker is Brian Barrett, who preaches for the church at Bear Branch, in Spurlockville, West Virginia. We encourage all persons interested in the faith of our fathers to open their Bibles, as we search the Scriptures, for these eternal truths, which can lead Christians back into unity as the family of God. Now, here is Brian.
This morning, we're going to be entering into the last chapter of the last book of the Bible. We have been looking at the book of Revelation for some time, at all the various events and circumstances which were to unfold. And so as we come to this section, this part, we kind of get God's last words on all matters until such time as Jesus returns again. And so as we begin in Revelation 22, which is in essence a continuation of what we were looking at in chapter 21, it talks about the angel that was with him, that was making the revelation, and so or presenting or assisting with that. And so in chapter 22, it opens up with the statement, "And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. And they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. And there shall be no night there. They need no candle, neither light of the sun, for the Lord God giveth them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. And he said unto me, These things are faithful and true. And the Lord God of the holy prophets sent his angel to show unto his servants the things which must shortly be done." We're going to stop there. We may get a little bit further, but we want to look at some of the aspects of this. We've been looking at the city. We've mentioned the fact that some people will take these things literally, and some people take them figuratively, and some people see them as a combination of both. Some see a lot of reference here to the church, and some also see toward heaven. And so there is again, not a great deal of distinction other than where we are as far as the church, the kingdom is concerned, because Hebrews 12 shows us that the kingdom is in heaven. The church of the firstborn, that's the headquarters. And he speaks there in Hebrews 12 about the general assembly and church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. And so we have a description of a fellowship that extends from the throne of God down into this world. And so whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. We are in his service. It's just a matter of where we are in his service. But as he speaks of this city, he talks about the fact that there was a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and the Lamb. Now, when we began this back in the 21st chapter with the new heaven and the new earth. We see that one of the things that was sticking out in that description was there was no more sea. The ideas of earth without a ocean, without the massive amount of water that we find here on earth. And so in that, it was a very dry place. But in this description that we have here, the one who was showing him the city showed him a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and the Lamb. When we look at the description in the book of Genesis, the 2nd chapter, as we think about paradise that was there, we know that there are descriptions that it had not yet rained. There was a mist that came up and watered the garden. And we're told that there was, in essence, what we would think of as some type of huge spring in the middle of the Garden of Eden. And water came out of that, and then it parted into 4 separate rivers that provided water then to other areas of the earth. And so that's the picture that we get of the Garden of Eden, the paradise of God. We think about that. That's where the garden was planted. That's where the tree of life was. That's where the knowledge of good and evil was. That's where the spring of water came forth that watered the earth and went forth. And so in a way, the image that we have here in the last 2 chapters is that paradise that was once lost is again restored. And much like the garden and paradise, the Garden of Eden, paradise as we think of it, here also there is a fountain of what it calls the water of life. And it is described here as proceeding from the throne of God and the Lamb. That is its starting point. That is the fountain of life, the fountain of blessings. It begins with God. Life is a gift that is given to us by God. It was given first in the Garden of Eden when he formed man out of the clay, the dust of the earth, the clay, and he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and he became a living soul. And from his side, he created woman, and so man and woman began there. Life began there in the garden with the tree of life, all the things that were necessary. It's kind of amazing to me, that there was, all this garden that was originally planted in Eden, and out of all of that you could eat. We go to the grocery store and we see the kind of fruits and vegetables and things that we eat here. But then when I see the things that Brother Stanley will show me, fruits and different things they eat, they're completely different. And when we look at South America and Africa and different places, there's all kinds of different fruits, such a wide variety, and likewise with what we think of as vegetables. And so everyone has available to them some kind of vegetable, but it may not necessarily always be what we think of. And, God planted that garden, and man was to tend it, care for it, eat of the things which were there. And so as we look at this, in verse 2, it says, in the midst of the street of it, and there again we have that singular statement, the street of it. Many times we hear people talking about the streets, plural of gold, but the Bible just speaks of the street. Again, it's a limited way of describing. I wonder sometimes John tries to describe what he sees, what is being shown to him, and in his vocabulary of that day, he had very limited means by which he could speak of things, streets, walls, those kind of things. Was talking yesterday, Nine and I were talking, we saw a thing on TV there, was talking about the image that Ezekiel saw as it came down there in Ezekiel's introduction to God. And, I've read that over and over and over again, and I've seen the things that various people have come up with. And, there just wasn't a way for Ezekiel to really describe what he was seeing. All he could do was use terminology that he had, and he tried to explain what he was seeing, but it was so far different from what he was used to that when we read his description of that, it doesn't really clear up anything. And I'd encourage you to turn and read the first part of Ezekiel, and you'll see that, if you were asked to draw a picture of what Ezekiel has described, where would you begin and what would you do and what would it look like? And so here we are. John is describing as best he can what he is seeing. And we're reminded again that John is limited in his vocabulary. Today, we would perhaps use a completely different kind of vocabulary to describe what John was seeing. John doesn't see lamps like they had. He sees the glory of God is its light, but what exactly that is, it's emanating there, neither sun or moon, these kind of things. And so here and too, we see the midst of the street of it. He speaks of that in that sense. On either side of the river was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And so we have this picture of the water flowing from the throne of God, and that's in the midst of the street of this city that John is looking at. And then we're told on either side, or as we would think of it, both sides of this river is planted the tree of life. Not apparently just one, but kind of get the idea that each side of the river is lined with the tree of life, or there is a ready access to the tree of life. Now, this goes back to the garden again. When man and woman were cast out of the garden, they were told, Adam was told, the sweat of the brow, again, he would eat bread until he returned to the dust, for out of it he was taken. Dust he was, dust he would return. And as they were cast out of the garden, God determines that lest they turn around and try again to sneak back into the garden or try to reach out and take of the tree of life, he placed cherubim there at the entrance or access to the garden to guard that and to prohibit access to the tree of life. Now, again, in Eden, was there one tree? Was there many trees? I don't know, but there was in Eden the tree of life. And we also have the idea of the tree of life, which is growing, available, pictured here on both sides of the river. And John describes this and is put in context the same as we would think of. In this new heaven and new earth, there's 12 months. The description that we have here that he has is that there were 12 manners of fruits that the tree produces, and that produces her fruit every month, and so 12, 12. Now, if you look at this verse, there's a lot of italicized words, and those are absent. There is, again, a little bit of struggle is trying to get all, what we have. From the basic is, in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, the tree of life, which bare 12 fruits, yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree for the healing of the nations. And so that's what the original text says. Now, how to arrange that in some kind of logical format that sometimes makes sense to us linguistically, again, what seems to have been the best that they've been able to come up with, and of course that would determine, again, the flavor of translation that you choose to use. But at least to me, it looks like from this description that John is seeing, it's sort of like, just to get an idea of what it might look like, is if you've ever been or seen in Washington, D.C., there's all the cherry trees that bloom along the sides of the road. Lots of people go into Washington, D.C. during the time of the cherry trees blooming just to be able to see the color and the beauty of all of that as you drive down the road and the trees on either side. And I just kind of think of it maybe in that sense. It talks about tree of life, again, in a singular sense, not trees, plural, but trees, singular, but the tree is on both sides of the river, so that's at least two. And so, again, from the description we have of the city, it's a very large city. And so there is what, at least to me, would appear to be access. We have the water of life. We have the tree of life. All of that is we have access to that. And the description here is that it gives its 12 fruits every month. And so there is a constant supply of this food to the tree of life, and so that we are not excluded or prohibited or kept from that. Now, whether you need to just eat one piece of fruit, one of the fruit in order that take you through the whole month, again, I don't know. There's this, there's a lot that we could come up with, but some have looked at the language here and says that, the tree, there's about 12 stages. They suggest there's 12 stages instead of 12 different kinds of fruit. There's 12 stages of the fruit ripening, and we would go from the bud to the bloom and et cetera till it's ripe.
The leaves, it says, for healing of the nations.
Yeah.
That makes me think of olives.
The olive branch.
Branch with leaves on it.
Yeah. And, as we look there, we have the fruit, and of course, whatever manner or however, the idea of the picture is that we have access to the water of life, we have access to the tree of life, and the description that we have in the book of Genesis is if man continues to eat of it. It's not like you take one bite out of it and you're going to live forever. It seems to be that there is a repeat process. Of course, in the life that we're going to have after this life is over and what heaven's going to be like and the type of body we have and all the kind of stuff that goes with that, Paul says it's even foolish sometimes to go into too much detail because much of that we don't understand. But as Greg is talking about here, the healing of the nations, as we go out of the garden, we see conflict. Conflict first started among brothers, Cain and Abel. One rose up against the other, and we see that first act of aggression. Beyond that, as time went on, the descendants of Adam and Eve began to multiply on the face of the earth. And with that, there was violence and corruption, and the world got to the point where it repented God that he had made man to dwell on the face of the earth. So he chose a family again, just like Adam and Eve. He chose a family, a unit, a united group of Adam, or of Noah and his wife, their sons, and their wives. 8 people, Peter says, were saved by water in 1 Peter 3. And so they go through that, and then the ark comes to rest on Mount Ararat, and no doubt they spent some time there as humanity and the animals and everything else began to go back out into the earth, to fill the earth. But in the process of time, as the number of men grew on the face of the earth, they entered into a place that we know famously as the place of Babel, Babylon. And in the book of Genesis chapter 11, as they came into that, God had told them to, and he gave them, go forth, go into all the world, replenish the earth, subdue it, have dominion. But they had a change of mind. They wanted to stay there together in one place and make for themselves a name, a people, and build a tower, it said, whose top could reach into heaven. And this was in, again, direct conflict with what God had planned. And so, and I'm getting to it, but in the process, God came down, he confounded the languages of these people, and that became the root of the nations. I mean, we're all from one blood, one people. You know, I know racists love to talk about the black race and the white race and the yellow race and all. There isn't any race other than the human race. We're all descended from the same couple, which is Adam and Eve. But because of the confounding of the language, not everyone could understand each other. And at the very start of that, there is some distrust. You know, even today, you go into a Mexican restaurant, you order dinner, and they bring the dinner out, and you hear the waiters speaking in Spanish. What are they saying? You know, I listen real carefully for like El Gordo or something to that effect. But I understand a little bit of Spanish, but, you know, you never know what they're saying. Like, can you believe that guy? He's already done that. I don't know. With the change in language, it becomes, there's sort of a suspicion. And so with that, the confounding of the languages, the next thing we find in the book of Genesis is the table of nations. Those languages and people not being able to communicate with each other. Now, apparently there were groups that were able to communicate. That forced them to flee into different directions, places where they could be with themselves, people that they trust, people they could understand, and that continues to progress into what we know as the nations. And of course, these separate groups each have their own genetic pool. And that genetic pool eventually, whoever again has the most parts and pieces, one will have darker skin, one will have lighter skin, some will have one color of eyes predominantly, one color of hair predominantly. Some people's hair are straight, some people's hair is curly. Whatever the genetic pool is, in the course of time, that creates what many people think of as the races, but that's really not an evolution of the human race. It's just the fact that in the gene pools, you get basically the majority of whatever you take with you. And the whole point of all that is from the time of Genesis 11 to this very day, we are suspicious of one another. We're filled with pride against others. We discriminate against others because, again, the color of their skin, the color of their eyes, where they live, we tend to be very prejudicial and discriminate against people, even though Paul says in Acts 17, God made of one blood all men, all mankind to dwell on the face of the earth. And so this division into nations, and again, it was that prejudicial tone comes into play with the Israelites. Were the Israelites not a nation? Were the Israelites a nation?
I think they were, Dave.
That they were a nation, but in the process of God making a special covenant with them, their language changed. And they referred to Israelites and who? The Gentiles, the nations. Well, are we not a nation? I mean, aren't we a people? Yes, we are. But again, we as Israelites say that we're special people. We have a special covenant, and so there is the people of God, there is the nation of Israel, and then there are the nations, the rest of y'all guys. And so all of this creates division. It created division. We see in the Bible, we see things happening in Galatians, the 2nd chapter, where Peter comes there and he starts to sit down and he's going to eat, but there's Gentiles there. The food ain't exactly the way and so again, they cause problems there at Galatia because Peter withdraws, Barnabas withdraws fellowship, table fellowship anyway, because of the food which is offered. Yes?
Before they were called Israelites, they were probably called Mesopotamians.
Yeah, they came out of they came out of the land or the area of Babylon. But the point in all this is that all the division, all the chaos is remedied in heaven. And so again, if you think in heaven because somebody's black or somebody's red or somebody's brown, if we have skin tone, or you don't like certain, God's not going to put up with this. He's given us time to learn here. But the nations, the peoples, Heaven is a place of healing. And again, if you're going to cause problems, you're not going to be there. And again, this is why over the years I've tried to get people to understand it. Being prejudiced, having certain hatred and preconceived ideas, this is going to blow up in your face one of these days, because we have a statement that John makes in 1 John 4, and the statement he makes there is, if we say, I love God, and we hate our brother, we're a liar. Because John says, if you can't love your brother who you have seen, how do you think you're going to love God who you haven't seen? Well, there's a lot of people may get surprised when they actually see Jesus. I don't think Jesus was a light-skinned, blonde, red-haired, blue-eyed kind of guy. It just does not fit the gene pool of where he came from. And heaven is a place for healing. Here, it's a place of division, sin, opinions, all those kind of things. But heaven, and the idea here is it is a place of healing, of coming back together. And the church should be the starting place of this healing. The church should be a place where everybody feels comfortable, whether they have a lot or whether they have little, whatever the color of their skin, whatever their nationalities. And so the healing process needs to begin here with the church. And then again, it will continue on into this heavenly realm. And we're told in verse 3 that there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. The curse, of course, is what we find in Genesis 3:16 through 19. The curse, if you want to call it that was placed on women because of what happened in the garden. Her life was greatly troubled, perplexed, difficulty in childbirth and things associated with that. Man was to work from the sweat of his brow. It wasn't going to be easy. Just don't stick your hand out and something falls into it. It's a little bit more than that. Paul in Romans 8:20 and 21 speaks about the fact that the creature or the creation was subject to vanity, to this vain existence, a curse of sin and death, a curse of vanity. As hard as you work and as hard as you work, you just can't seem to ever catch up. That's one of the things I hear people all the time. No matter how hard I work, it just seems like I never get caught up. There's always something else. And again, I think many times of my mom. She would cook supper and she would be in the kitchen washing dishes and all that. And before she went to bed, we'd fill the sink back up again. Vanity. I mean, that's a simple thing, but it multiplies many times over. This life wears us down and it wears us out. So the picture that John has here in 22 for us to think about is a place where, again, we have access to the water of life. We have free access to the tree of life. There's no more curse. The curse of sin and death. There is no more death. Death and hell have been cast into the lake of fire. There is no more judgment. The judgment has passed. And so we're in a new situation where God is with us. He dwells with us. Says we shall serve him. We shall see his face, and his name shall be in our foreheads. And of course, throughout the study of the book of Revelation, we've talked about the fact that this concept or this idea of the sealing of the forehead is not a literal thing, but the minds of all of those who dwell there in that city are focused on God. They are all under His direction. There is no more curse. There's no more sin. Outside this realm in the eternal abode of torment are all those who offend and cause problems. So everyone there will be there because they want to be there. They've put forth an effort to be there. And God will be with them. Jesus told us in His Father's house are many mansions, many dwelling places. He repeats again in verse 5 something we've already seen, that there shall be no night there, need no candle or oil lamp, neither light of the sun, for God giveth them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. This is going back, at least to me, into various places, but in Romans 8, Paul speaks there about us being joint heirs with Jesus as the sons of God. Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons or the children of God. And so the curse is lifted. It is a place of healing. It is a place of growing. And they shall serve Him. That means, again, the West Virginia image of somebody leaning up against a tree with a straw twig in their mouth, just resting for all eternity, is not exactly the picture of heaven. Heaven is a place where people continue to serve God. I don't know what all God has planned for us and the angels and the heavenly host after all of this is over. But God is from everlasting to everlasting, and so we're not, again, going to just stop.
Where it says they shall see His name on their forehead. What is it saying? God's name.
Their mind, their thought process will be subject to God. And one of the interesting things that we see in the book of John chapter 1 is he says, no man has seen God at any time. But here, in this new vision John has, they shall see His face. And again, their minds will be in agreement with God. Again, the forehead speaks to the mind, the hands. In the other images we've had about the mark of the beast in the hand, Rome didn't particularly care whether you agreed with them or not, but as long as you did what they asked, that was enough. And so as we see this, He said unto me, these things are faithful and true. And the Lord God of the holy prophets sent His angel to show unto His servants the things which must shortly be. And so, you can bank on this. These things are faithful and true. Behold, I come quickly. Blessed is he that keepeth the sayings of the prophecy of this book. And so he adds that footnote. There were things which must shortly come to pass with the destruction of Jerusalem. A lot of people, especially of that time, was going to lose their right to the tree of life and to the things because of their rebellion against God. But that will extend on out, as we've already discussed through the book of Revelations. And so the blessing is on he that keepeth the sayings. And I, John, saw these things and heard them. And when I had heard and seen, I fell down to worship before the feet of the angel which showed me these things. Then said he unto me, See thou do it not, for I am thy fellow servant, and of thy brethren the prophets, and of them that keep the sayings of this book. Worship God. As John was saying, the glory of all of this, and you have to remember, he's been painting us a picture, but he saw this all at once. He was standing there looking at all that. And He describes it to us. And John is overwhelmed by the things that he's seeing. And he bows down, he falls down before the feet of the angel, which is showing him these things. And he's overcame by that. But the angel quickly says, don't do that. I'm your kinsman. This messenger, this angel, we are alike. I'm just like your brethren, the prophets, just like your kinsmen and others that you know. I may be in heaven, you may be on earth, but don't do that. Worship God. I'm merely one like those who have kept the words of this book. I'm merely a servant of God doing the will of God. Worship and serve Him.
Why not make this the day that you and your family seek out the Church of Christ in your community? We encourage you to attend one of our worship times or Bible studies. God's grace, truth, and salvation is truly worth finding and knowing. May God bless and keep you as we walk together in His truth. And remember, as always, the Churches of Christ salute you. Our new programs are posted to Facebook and YouTube on Thursday afternoon, and they should be available for viewing by 7 p.m. We also encourage our viewers to visit our website at www.thechurchesofchrist.life. We ask that you like us on Facebook and share our programs. On YouTube, please share and subscribe for notifications. This program was pre-recorded.